Okay, so Mem Gimel Amud Beis, and just to back up a little bit, the Mishnah was very simple. The Gemara was trying to figure it out. The Mishnah said a case where Amudirana, somebody is not allowed to benefit, Reuven is not allowed to benefit from Shimon, and they're on the road, and Reuven doesn't have any food, and Shimon wants to give it to him. So it says if there's somebody else, so Shimon should give it to him for keeps. It's yours. Do whatever you want, and Reuven's hungry. So, but they don't have to give it to him. So that would be an eitzah that Shimon will give it to somebody else, and then that person will realize and give it to Reuven. And he doesn't not obligated to give it to him, so therefore it's mutter. But then the case was if nobody else is around, is enough to be mafkirit. Tanakama said yes. Here it said any more mafkir, nobody else is around. Put it down on the boulder, whatever, on the fence, and say it's hefker. Then he's allowed to take it. But Rebbe disagrees with that. That was yesterday's Mishnah. Rebbe holds you're not allowed to. Yesterday we had a machlokes. Why not? There was a Yochanan, and then there was Rabbah. Was that true? Rava was that there afterwards. So Yochanan said, a big chiddush. Rabbi Yossi holds the way hefker works is that it's available for anybody to take it, but it's not out of your domain until somebody takes it. That a new pshat hefker works. We think like the Rabbanan that hefker means it's out of your rishus. Now it's ownerless, and then somebody could take it from that ownerless state. But Rabbi Yossi holds no, it's not ownerless. It's still you own it until somebody takes it, but you get permission anybody to take it, and that would be the reason why Rabbi Yossi makes sense. That Shimon can't put it down on the rock and say it's hefker, then Reuven comes and takes it because Reuven took it from Shimon. According to Rabbanan, he disowned it. Shimon disowns it to nobodies, and now Reuven can take it from nobody. That would be a nice shot. The one problem that it says a difference if he was mafkir at first and then made the neder that it's mutter. Why should Rabbi Yossi say that? The more trying to say because when he was making a neder, he didn't mean to include that which was already hefker, even though it officially still belonged to Shimon. When they made the neder on Reuven, so he didn't mean to include things which were already called hefker, even though it officially still belonged to Shimon. And that the Rabbi Akasha, because that place where it talks about what was that called? B'sasam Rishon, Kolim L'Sheni. So he's including even what he gave away already. So too, the Gemara said if it still officially belongs to Shimon, when they make a neder on Reuven that he shouldn't benefit from Shimon, it means anything, even things that were already announced hefker. So Rabbi didn't like Rabbi Yochanan's pshat, and therefore Rabbi said a new pshat. That really he also agrees that the hefker works immediately. You get out of your rishus even according to Rabbi Yossi, but he made gzeira mishumat as beis chor, and that was the case. We said yesterday, Mishnah coming up about someone made a wedding he wanted, and his father was not allowed to benefit from him, so he told somebody give it to you, and the person said you're not really giving it to me because if I'd be makdash it, you would blow your top. That means that you're not giving it to me. So if you're not giving it to me, then it doesn't work for neder also. It doesn't. It can be a joke. It has to be serious. And here also is not going to be serious. If he's going to be mafkir, then he knows that he's just doing it in order that Reuven should get it. So it's not a real belief. Shalom, it's not a real hefker. That was yesterday's Gemara. The Gemara now seems to be going back to Rabbi Yochanan. Means this new concept he said is it possible Rabbi Yossi holds that hefker doesn't leave the ownership until somebody else takes it over. That's how Rabbi Yochanan explained. There was a kasha on it, but with disregarding the kashas, we're going back to Rabbi Yochanan. Back to the Mishnah. Shimon wants to give food to Reuven, who is not allowed to benefit from him. Tanakama says he could be mafkirit, and Reuven's allowed to take it. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, you can't do that because even though you're mafkirit, it's still in your domain until somebody takes it. Simple. So now the Gemara is going back to that pshat, even though Rabbi disagreed. We're going back to Rabbi Yochanan's pshat. The whole Gemara here is not so simple. For you see the big Rishonim over here, very long. So the Rosh himself goes through the whole Gemara one way, then he goes through the whole Gemara another way. From the beginning, starts from the beginning, a whole different pshat. I didn't understand, but I'll just try to get through the words. There are a lot of difficulties in this Gemara, but we'll see how we can read it without making complications. Tanya, it's a brisa. This brisa happens to be in Maseches Maasros. That's going to be it's about hefker, but it has to do with Maseches Maasros. The reason is because there's an underlying factor about Maaseh hefker that has to do with Maaseh. That even though you're chayv in Maaseh, if you're mafkir and then you took it from hefker, it could be that you put it from Maaseh, even though you're chayv in Maasros. But if you're mafkir at a certain point before it was chayv in Maasros, and then you took it from hefker, so you wouldn't be chayv in Meiser maybe. That's the reason why a person might want to be mafkir something in order to get out of Meiser. So that's the underlying factor over here. Here it says, Tanya,
Somebody that picks something up from Hefker doesn't have to Meiser.
Right, unless it was Chayv and Meiser already. If it was already Chayv and Meiser, if he finds
we
it,
assume that it was Meiser.
no, that's not the question. I want to know if you assume it's Meiser or not. But if something was Chayv and Meiser and it was not Me'usar, if the Chiv Meiser took effect already, it was Tevel, right? It was Tevel means it's in a way that already had the Malacha, whatever that's called. Then it doesn't help that you mafkir it, then it's not going to take off the Chiv of Meiser. If you find the apple rolling near the shuk or something like that, so it's already had, if it's Chayv and Meiser and it wasn't tied, it doesn't help the fact that you're picking it up from the street. Maybe it was Chayv and Meiser already. But we're talking about if it be a case before the Chiv Meiser took effect, before the Gemar Malach or whatever it might have been.
Then it was Hefker.
So then, if it was Hefker, so then he'd be Pater.
Even if he takes it in to his house.
Because he took it from Hefker. The Gemara was going to say later on in Brisa that somebody, if there was somebody had a field which was Hefker and he picked it from Hefker, it could be that he's put that in Pater. So whenever the case, I don't know exactly, I don't know the exact range when he has to take it. But there's such an issue about being Hefker. I didn't go into those details, but there's an issue that if somebody will take something from Hefker, it might be part of a Maisa, even his own. He's mafkir it, and I'll take it back if he did it at the right time in its development and its growth and its production. So then, if you part of a Maisa, that's why a person wants to know if it's considered Hefker or not. So, without going into the details, if somebody's mafkir his field, and then he wants to retract the Hefker. So there's a big difference between retracting and taking from Hefker. Taking from Hefker means that it was Hefker, and now I took it from Hefker. But when he wants to be Chozerbo, he wants to nullify that it's not Hefker. It wasn't Hefker. So can he retract his Hefker? So here it says that within 3 days he could retract. After 3 days he cannot retract. What does 3 days do? We have no idea yet. What's Nagir to Maisa, let's point out that the Yochel Achzabo makes that, therefore, it's not considered a Hefker, which will pater him from Maisa. So Yochel Achzabo is another way of saying, and in the case of Maisa, it's not going to help him. If he would take it within 3 days, it wasn't considered Hefker. And if he would take it back, if he would want to retract, it's retractable, and therefore it wasn't Hefker, and it's going to be Chayv Maisa. After 3 days, he cannot retract, and even if he does, it's not called a retraction. And therefore, if he, in case as far as Maisa would go, it was a Hefker, and therefore he is part of Maisa. I'm not putting in what the Brisa wants. This thing of Yochel Achzabo, if it will be in monetary law, so then okay, that's all. So Yochel Achzabo is like a leniency, but it comes out here that Yochel Achzabo would be a stringency, that it's not considered a Hefker, and therefore the produce is going to be Chayv and Maisa. Just to always translate if it's Hefker or not has ramifications as far as Maisa goes. If it's a good Hefker, then he'd be Potter from Maisa. If it's not a good Hefker, so then he's Chayv and Maisa. Mm-hmm. So here we don't know what this is, but it says something about the reading. There are other ramifications also, right? Other ramifications also.
Is this the end of the Brisa? It's going to
the Brisa continues. Mm-hmm. This is the ration, and it says something about 3 days. But you see, sometimes there is a possibility to retract Hefker. There's sometimes within 3 days there is such a thing as retracting Hefker. Mm-hmm. The Brisa continues. Amar tehei sadazim ufkeres liyom echad, or l'shabbos achas, or l'chodesh echad, or l'shana achas, or l'shavua achas. If you made a temporary Hefker. We spoke about a temporary neder, we spoke about a temporary kedushin, temporary hektish. We had suggestions about making something temporary. Here's talking about a temporary hefker. He says, I'm making it hefker for 1 day. It means if anybody takes it within 1 day, you got it from hefker. After a day's over, the hefker expired. If nobody took it within the first day, we're going to take it. So then the hefker expires. Or you might have said not 1 day, might have said a week. A Shabbos achas means a week, or a month, or a year, or 7 years. A whole sweet day. He's making hefker for the next 7 years, and if anybody takes it within 7 years, so then he took it from Hefker. If it came 7 years, nobody took it, so then the Hefker expires, and it's not Hefker anymore. Someone's going to come after the time that he had designated, how long it's going to be Hefker, no matter what it is, from 1 day to 70, whatever it is. He made it Hefker for a month. Whoever comes within 30 days can take it from Hefker. After 30 days, the Hefker expires. That was his case. So what's the halacha?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you read the ad shalom? Or you didn't?
No, so far this is the case. And now it's going to say the
You
halacha.
said the case is when he says a certain amount of time.
Right,
If
made a
somebody
temporary.
takes it, then the hefker worked and the guy.
No, it didn't say the halacha, it just said the case. Someone announced a temporary hefker. What's the halacha?
No, you said if somebody comes and takes it, then it was good.
Right, that's what he's saying. That's what he's announcing. He's announcing that you could take it's hefker for a certain amount of time. After that, the time expires and it's not hefker anymore.
Oh, I see.
That was the
Okay.
case. So the
Okay.
halacha is, the halacha is yachal lachzabo. Mishazachabo beinu beinacher. The halacha is ein yachal lachzabo. He wants to know. The question is, could he retract? Could he retract? Again, the question is, could he retract his hefker? The case was
We say 3 days.
so now we're reading a sefer. You're right. The Rishon said one thing, sefer says something else. The Rishon said within 3 days, everything's telling within 3 days,
Right.
and the sefer doesn't say it's telling within 3 days. It
He
even
says
talks.
as long
It
as
even talks
nobody
about
else came,
right,
you or somebody else
right.
didn't
As,
come.
as,
Go ahead.
right. As long as nobody took it, he can retract. Even 6 years later, like the case was. It even gave a 7-year case. If nobody took it, both if nobody took it, not him, means he also could have taken it. The Torah's taking it from Hefker. But if he didn't take it, nobody took it, not him, not somebody else, nobody took it. So then he could retract, and Hefker's not a Hefker.
Even in
But-
the 7-year period?
Within the 7
Oh,
years,
I see.
let's talk simple, 30 days. Let's talk a week or 30 days.
Okay.
The point is going to be that it's more than 3 days. Before it's done in the
Right.
ratio that after 3 days you cannot retract. Within 3 days you could retract. After 3 days you cannot retract. Here it says a different criteria. Here it says as long as nobody took it. As long as nobody took it, you could retract. After somebody took it, means somebody took it within the time period, within the time that it was still effective hefker. So then
It's his.
you cannot retract.
Right.
And no difference if it's him or you. You also might have taken it, like it says, beinu beinacher. If you took it,
Right.
the Torah's in the state of taking it from hefker, so then you took it from hefker. You can't retract the hefker. The hefker was hefker, and you took it from hefker. You retook it. You regained it. That's the end of the brisa. So the Gemara looks at this brisa, and then we go back to our thought about Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan in our Mishnah, with Rabbi Yochanan's way of looking at it. So we should really, I should have made a preface if I would have been smarter, and made a preface.
Remind us what the.
Rabbi Yochanan, there's a machlokes, according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's machlokes between Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi, how Hefker works, the mechanics of Hefker. The Mishnah said, if Reuven and Shimon are on the road, Reuven is not allowed to benefit from Shimon, and he's hungry, and Shimon wants to help him out, but he can't because I have food and I can't give it to you because you're benefiting from it. I have extra sandwich, but I can't give it to you because you're benefiting. I'm benefiting. So the Mishnah said, if somebody else is around, give it to somebody else, give it to the Levi, he'll give it to him. But if nobody else is around, so Tanakama says you could be mafkirid. And Rabbi Yossi said you cannot be mafkirid. And Rabbi Yochanan said the reason Rabbi Yossi is because Hefker remains in the domain of the owner until somebody picks it up. The Rabbanan say as soon as you put it down, you make it ownerless, it's ownerless, it's out of your wishes. And Rabbi Yossi says it doesn't work like that. The mechanics of Hefker work that I'm letting people to take it, but it's in my domain until somebody takes it. If we would have stopped during the Mishnah and asked this question, is it possible to retract the Hefker? Without knowing anything, what would we have said? Is it possible to retract the Hefker? Not to take it from Hefker, not to be Zocha from Hefker, to retract the Hefker. Can you, the question, so forget about what we just learned over there. What would you say from the Mishnah?
Rabbi Yossi would say yes. And the
No,
Rabbanan would
say
say
no.
no.
So Levi Yaakov was saying that we would say that it depends on this question. The question of Rabbi Yochanan's machlokis in the Rabbanan Rabbi Yossi, how does Hefker work? If it works, that right away it leaves your ownership. So how could you retract? It left you already. It's like you give something, let's say you give a present to somebody, and then you come back the next day and say, I retract. He looks at you like, like, well, it's too late, like you gave it to me. So Hefker also looks at him like that. You gave it, Hefker means you disowned it, and then you say retract. How could you retract? You gave it away already. You gave it, you didn't give it to somebody, but you left your ownership. You can't retract. But according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yochanan explains Rabbi Yossi that every Hefker never leaves you. It's just allowing somebody to take it, but nobody took it. So according to him, you could retract. Makes sense? We do it, and now, so that's how we would have prefaced from the Mishnah. We would have made an application, ramifications of this machlokes that Rabbi Yochanan explains in Rabbanan Rabbi Yossi. There would be enough kamina if you could retract a hefker. Of course, if nobody took it. If somebody took it, then it took it out of your rishus. But we're all talking about nobody took it. Can you retract the hefker? We would have said that according to Rabbanan, you cannot. According to Rabbi Yossi, you can. Now you have a brisa without looking at the fine details. The Reisha says,
You get 3 days.
forget about that's a detail.
Oh, that's a detail?
The Reisha says that there is such a case of
Retract.
not retracting.
Not retracting.
The chiddush is, yeah,
Exactly.
they say that
Retract.
after 3 days you
There's a
cannot
case of
retract.
not retracting. I
You
see.
cannot retract. How
Yeah.
come within 3 days you could? That's a nice point. But
Uh-huh.
there's such a thing as not being able to retract.
So that-
According to Rabbi Yossi, it wouldn't make sense. Why can you not retract? You never left your domain, even after 3 days.
Right.
So the ratio, if you take the ratio grossly without looking at the details of if it's less than 3, 1 and 3, we would say the fact that you cannot be choser is according to the Rabbanan,
Mhm.
that when you have mafkir, it left your rishus, so you can't take it back. And the sefer that says you can retract as long as nobody took it, you can take it back even if it's a long time. That fits b'chora with
Yes.
Rabbi Yossi that you could retract, and that's what the Gemara says. Reisha Rabbanan Sefer Rabbi Yossi. Now the Gemara is not looking at all the details. The Reisha says something about 3 days. That even though it says in the Reisha you may not retract, that's only after 3 days. Within 3 days you could retract. And the Sefer talks about a very fancy case. It's a temporary hefker that you said it expires. It doesn't say regular hefker. It says you made a temporary hefker of 1 day, 1 week, a month, a year, 7 years. Then it says that as long as nobody took it, you can retract. It doesn't say a regular simple case that you can retract the hefker as long as nobody took it. But the Gemara seems to be ignoring all those details and just saying it seems that the Reisha is Rabbanan and it seems that the Sefer is Rabbi Yossi. The Reisha says there's a thing of not being able to retract. That's according to Rabbanan because it left your domain right away as soon as you mafkir. And the Sefer says that you can retract as long as nobody else took it. That sounds like Rabbi Yossi. That it didn't leave you. Even if you mafkir, it didn't leave you. You just gave permission that anybody could take it, but nobody took it. So it's still mine, so I can retract. That's how the Gemara sees the Brisa and is asking a contradiction. The Reish and the Sefer seem to be two different opinions.
But even to Rabbi Yossi, he can take it himself without retracting.
That's what retracting means. He's not taking. He's
All have Karim
can retract. So what are you asking?
He could have taken his own. He can take it back without retracting. And
That's what
so
retracting
he
is. No, it depends how, if he takes it back and he says that, he's saying there's no difference, even if he takes it back with Torah Schia, he also
Yeah.
never left, he took it from himself.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a lot.
but that's called retracting maybe. But maybe, but anyway, it says here that there is such a thing as retracting indefinitely until somebody takes it. So the Gemara attributes that to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, that makes sense according to Rabbi Yossi, the way Rabbi Yochanan explained that when you mafka something, it doesn't leave your domain until somebody takes it. So it says you can retract until somebody takes it. That's how the Gemara sees superficially the machlok, the Reish and the Sefer seem to be two different opinions. The Reish is Rabbanan and the Sefer is Rabbi Yossi, which is not so nice. It's not nice to have that the Brisa mid-sentence is going to change who's talking. That's the kasha. Reish Rabbanan and Sefer Rabbi Yossi. That's the kasha. So there's going to be two terutzim now. There's going to be Ula and Rish Lakish.
Mhm.
And Shlakish is going to be a few lines further. So Ula says that since the Reisha is the Rabbanan, we'd like the whole thing to be Rabbanan. Sefer Nami Rabbanan. As if it would say that the Reisha Rabbanan, Sefer Nami Rabbanan. We're going to try to figure out why Rabbanan agree in the Sefer that he can retract. The Gemara doesn't even bother asking how come, according to Rabbanan, you can retract within 3 days. Even the Reisha alone still needs explanation. As if we did a half job. We just said that you sometimes cannot retract, but between 3 days you could retract. So we didn't bother asking that. I don't know why. The Gemara is going to maybe come. We'll see soon. But the Gemara wants to know how does the Sefer fit with Rabbanan that you can retract even as long as nobody took it. So why is that? Ama'ula Sefer Nami Rabbanan. So how come you could retract until somebody takes it? So the Gemara says a few words. Shani shana v'shavua de lo shlichi. This case of making a temporary hefker, for example, for a year or for 7 years. The Bryce also spoke about a month and a week and a day. But the concept of making a temporary hefker is not usual, lo shlichi. That's the answer. What's the answer? That even though the Rabbanan say when you make hefker, it goes out of your domain right away. This case is different since it was a temporary hefker, which we mentioned ourselves when we learned the Bryce and we said that the Sefer as Rabbi Yossi, you could retract a hefker. We said, why does it talk about a temporary hefker? Why don't say a special, a straight din that hefker you can retract as long as nobody took it. Here the Gemara is relating to that issue, and it says that it's Rabbanan talking, and the Rabbanan only say that you could retract if it was a temporary hefker. So the words alone, the Gemara does say, first of all, it does says Shana Shavua. It really should talk about everything.
So Rabbanan mean they only mean
No, the case is talking about the case that the top line talks about a temporary hefker. It says the case was someone said this hefker for a day, for a week, so then as long as nobody took it, you could take it back.
Yeah,
but they only said it.
Ula is saying that he's only talking about a shavua or a year.
No, he doesn't mean that. No, he doesn't mean not the other cases.
A day also.
Yeah, it means all of them. This case of making a temporary, you're right that of course it's dochak. Why does it say after a year and 7 years? It means the whole concept of making a temporary hefker is not usual, and the whole case, even the case of one day, this whole case, right? The whole case of making a temporary hefker is unusual, and therefore what? Doesn't say. So the Rosh says that it's not a good hefker. It doesn't have to do with not being regular as much as that it's a hefker garua. It's a weak kind of a hefker. The fact that it's not a permanent hefker, it's a temporary hefker. So there, the Rabbanan also agree to the lumdus of Rabbi Yossi. This question, when you mafka something, does it leave your domain right away, or only it's available for somebody to pick it up, but until they pick it up, it's still yours? That question. So Rabbi Yossi holds that every hefker works like that. Every hefker is that it belongs to you until somebody takes it. And Rabbanan say no, that a regular hefker leaves your domain as soon as you said that. You disown it, you don't own it anymore. But they do agree to Rabbi Yossi's lumdus when it's a temporary hefker. A temporary hefker is not as strong as a real hefker, as a permanent hefker, and therefore they also agree that it doesn't leave your domain until somebody picks it up. So he wants to learn the whole Bryce is going to Rabbanan, that when you mafka something, it leaves your domain, even if nobody picked it up. There's a question still why within 3 days, we still didn't figure out. But the end of the Bryce says, but even we hold that if it was only a temporary hefker, so a temporary hefker does not leave your domain until somebody picks it up, and therefore you can retract as long as nobody picked it up.
According to the rabbis. According to the rabbis.
Right.
Yeah.
According to
Yossi says all mafkirim are still
Right.
in your domain.
Right. Only Rabbi Yossi will say, Rabbi Yossi wouldn't say this case of a temporary hefker. He would say every hefker works like that it's yours until somebody takes it. That's how Ula explains the Brisa. That Sefer Nami Rabbanan, Yachi Amar Yad Shelo Zocha Ba Yachal Achzabo, Shani Shana Shavua Delo Shchichi. And Shchichi, the Rosh explains, it doesn't get into the word so well. Shchichi means it's not usual, but the point is that it's not so strong. It's not a strong hefker. The fact that it's the temporary. Okay, that was Ula's pshat.
The ratio meant of this price,
right?
Not the Mishnah.
Where do you have the words ratio? Yeah, the ratio of the Bryce. The ratio of the Bryce, and the ratio is the Amud Beis, the 2 lines over there, and the Sefer is the top of this page where it speaks about temporary. The ratio says that you cannot retract after 3 days, and the Sefer says you could retract until somebody picks it up. That was Ula. Rish Lakish goes the other way, that the Sefer is Rabbi Yossi, and he doesn't bother. He doesn't explain this. I didn't find. He doesn't explain why he's talking about a temporary hefker, even if it will be a permanent hefker. Also, Rabbi Yossi holds that you can retract till somebody picks it up. And I didn't look at everything, but apart from everything, but I didn't see this question. How come the Bryce only talks about a temporary hefker? It could have been even spoken about a permanent hefker. Rabbi Yossi holds you could retract till somebody picks it up. But the question is, according to Rabbi Yossi, how come the ratio says that after 3 days you cannot retract? With the Sefer Rabbi Yossi, so how come the ratio says you cannot retract? The ratio, the reason for the ratio that you cannot retract after 3 days. In order that you should not forget, they shouldn't be forgotten the whole din of hefker. If you're going to, means there is a din of hefker even according to Rabbi Yossi. L'chora means that when somebody does take it, they can't say nothing happened. There is such a thing as hefker. Rabbi Yossi has said that it doesn't take effect. It doesn't leave your ownership until somebody else picked it up. But when somebody else did pick it up, it does belong to him. He's not denying the issue of hefker. He's just saying the mechanics work, that it doesn't leave your domain till someone else's domain. But there is such a thing as hefker. If you're going to say that a person could retract even after 3 days, people are gonna forget that there's such a thing as hefker. You always could retract. You always could undo it. So you didn't do anything. So in order to make people aware that there is such a thing as hefker, they said after 3 days you cannot retract.
So it's sort of like a gazera.
Yes, right. Gezerah shelo yishtakach Torah's hefker. It doesn't say the word, but that's what it means.
This is what? This is Reish Lakish?
This is Rav Lakish's explanation why Rabbi Yossi will agree in the Reisha that you cannot retract. And the reason is that he shouldn't forget Torah Sefka. I guess I didn't think about this, but then in the Sefer, how come you can retract? Is he also going to say because it's a temporary hefker? He's also going to come on to the difference between a temporary and a permanent. With the Reisha, Rabbi Yossi would say that you could always retract, even in the Reisha, but they made a gezerah that people should realize there is such a thing as hefker. And therefore they said after 3 days you can't retract. But he himself is also going to say, but if it was a temporary hefker, so then they didn't make this Rabbanan, and it goes back to the Raisa that you can retract them as long as you want. What? Doesn't go into the Gezerah. It's not going to make the Gezerah. Not that they changed it and they made a Rabbanan over there, like Rabbanan will say. But the whole thing with the Raisa, you're allowed to retract as long as you want. They sometimes made a Rabbanan not to retract, and in this case, they didn't make a Rabbanan not to retract.
When it's temporary.
When it's temporary. This I didn't realize, but I guess as we're talking, that's what comes out. Now the Gemara finally comes to tell us what's the difference between the first 3 days and afterwards. And the Gemara seems to be going only in the snoop shot of Rabbi Yossi, but the Mefarshim say it applies to Rabbanan also. Then now the Gemara is finally going to tell us, no matter how you learn the Reisha, if it's going to be Rabbanan, that you cannot retract, how come you could retract the first 3 days? If it's Rabbi Yossi, that really should be able to always retract, but they made a Gezerah that he should not retract after 3 days. So why to make Gezerah also the first 3 days? So now the Gemara is going to explain what difference is between the first 3 days and afterwards. And even though the Gemara is only going in Rabbi Yossi's Rabbana, the Lachara applies according to Rabbanan's Daraisa also. How come you may retract within 3 days? You should be able to retract. You should be able not to retract. You shouldn't be able to retract even the first day, for a second. Because of the deceitful people, that they're going to be mafkir and they're going to retract. Why are they interested in doing that? Why they trying to be mafkir is theirs. Why be mafkir for? So now we finally see the Meiser issue. The Gemara didn't tell us yet the issue of Meiser. But here is where it's coming to light, that there's an issue of people that want to get their produce butter from Meiser. So they're going to make it hefker and then take it back. And then, now if they would be mafkir and take it back, they might have succeeded, that they disowned it and then they took it back like anybody else could have taken it. And they are butter from Meiser. But for some reason, they don't do that. They want to retract their hefker. These deceitful people, these Ramayim, the way they want to get out of Meiser is by being mafkirit and then retracting. If they wanted to, if they'd be more, right? They should have been mafkirit and then taken it back from hefker, and then they would have been successful, deceitful people.
Successful, but Ramayim.
Okay, they say that.
So what were they doing?
But they were being mafkirit and retracting their hefker.
What was that going to come?
So they thought that they are pater from Meiser.
Oh, but they did it wrong.
But they didn't. Now, why don't they? So the Rosh says, why don't they do it right and do this harama without ramai harama? Why don't they do that? Why don't they do it in a cunning way? That's legal, a legal loophole. Why don't they be mafkirid and take it back? So I think he says because they're scared if they're going to be mafkirid and just being able to take it back themselves, but other people also will be able to take it just like them. And he might be a little bit further away, a big field, and they see that he's taking his stuff, and after it's mafkirid, they're also going to come and take it. He wants to be able to reserve the right that any time be retracted. He retracts. He doesn't take it back from hefker. He retracts his hefker. That he can do even from far away, remote control. And he doesn't have to pick it up in order to. He has a string on his hefker the whole time. Whenever he wants to, he turns it off. He says, "I retract."
And somebody may come to take it and says,
He sees somebody coming. He
It's
says, "I
fine."
retract." So if he'd have to pick it up himself, so then other guy's faster. He comes with a truck. He comes with a combine, and he's ready to go. So
Oh, but
he
thinks
wants.
it's
So he
correct.
retracts. That's why they do it in that way. But we wanted to stop him from doing that. If they're by retracting, means, let's say, according to Rabbi Yossi now, is there a way to retract? You really
The rice.
What are we talking about now? We're saying now that in the first 3 days, we say that you can retract, and therefore it's not Bata from Maisa. The issue of the Bryce was really to say that within 3 days, if you take it back, within 3 days, you didn't accomplish. It's still Chayv and Maisa. In order to be Pater and Maisa, you have to wait 3 days. You have to wait 3 days. 3 days, he's scared to leave it for 3 days. Even if he could retract, even if he's scared to do that. What am I saying it straight? That we want to make sure that he doesn't do this deceitful thing of retracting it, of retracting his Maisa. Retracting. If he successfully retracts, then he messed himself up, because if you retract the hefker, then it is really not Pater for Maisa. He thinks that he could be mafkir it and retract his Maisa, and he thinks that he's Pater. Really is not. That's a mistake. This Ramai is he got caught in this trick, because if he would be mafkir and take it back like anybody else, it would have been true. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be mafkir and then retract. So because he wants to be able to have a hold on his hefker, that he should be able to nullify it at any time, and know if he sees somebody else coming to take it. He doesn't. It's too dangerous for him to be mafkir and then pick it up himself. Somebody else is going to pick it up. So he wants to be able to retract it, and that really doesn't pater him from Maisa. If he retracts it, so then it was never really pater from Maisa. It's never hefker, so it's not pater from Maisa. So because of that, we said that the first 3 days, what? The hefker is not a hefker. Hefker is not a hefker.
And he's Chayv
and Maisa. If he's going to want to do this, he's going to have to wait for 3 days. Then it'll be good hefker, and then he'll be able to take it back. But everybody else also could take it. And during those 3 days,
he did a percentage. It says if I wait for 3 days, 40% chance somebody's going to pick it up. But I have a 60% chance that I could pick them up after 3 days.
If he wants to do it, he can do it.
It's a good
But if he wants to do it, he can do it. But it's going to be that it's really not retractable anymore, and he's taking it back, and then it'll be Pater from Maisa. If it will be, as long as it's retractable, so then the hefker is not a good hefker, and it is Chayv and Maisa. What did we say?
So we're saying the idea that he can retract is just the Rabbanan.
The fact that he can retract is in order to avoid the Ramayim who are going to be mafkir and retract. That's why we said that it's retractable. I'm not sure if I'm making sense. I'm saying the words.
Yeah, I think so.
If it makes sense, if everyone's happy.
It keeps it still a Pater for
It's Chayv and Maisa.
And therefore the Ramai is going to lose out.
He's not going to be able to do his Ramos.
Even in those 3 days.
So in general, what does Rosh Lakish say? That Rabbi Yossi, his lumdus of hefker is that it does not leave your domain until somebody takes it. So really, he would start off saying that you're always allowed to retract. Means the sefer, you're always allowed to retract. But the Reisha says no. After 3 days, you may not retract. Why is that? In order that it shouldn't be forgotten, Torah's hefker. If you're going to think that you could retract indefinitely, people will think that even if somebody took it, also, or if you took it or somebody else took it, also that it wasn't hefker. And really it is. There is such a thing as hefker, somebody else takes it. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi said that once it was 3 days, it is not retractable, in order that people should get the idea that such a thing is hefker. Even though Midaraisa, Rabbi Yossi would say that you always could retract, because every hefker always works with the lumdus that somebody could take it, but it's still in your domain. But in order to this area, people shouldn't forget about hefker completely. So they said that after 3 days, you cannot take it back. Aval Doraisa, lo havi hefker. The Doraisa, what is this going on? The
I
Doraisa, lo
thought we're
havi
saying
hefker.
that somebody the first 3 days, isn't it?
Within the first 3 days,
When he makes something hefker, it really isn't hefker.
really isn't hefker. It's going back on the first 3 days. Aval Doraisa, lo havi hefker. And you know what? And you would be able to retract even after the 3 days. This would be going back. You could read the words now. The Raisa Lavi Afka is lead up to the next kasha. And even though it says in the Raisa, in the Reisha, it says that you cannot retract after 3 days, means it's Hefka and you cannot retract. With the Raisa, you would be, there's no such thing as Hefka. It means no such thing as just till somebody takes it, it's not Hefka. The Rabbi Yossi holds that the way Hefka works is that it's yours until somebody takes it. And therefore, you always should be able to retract. when it says in the brisa that you cannot retract after 3 days, that's midrabanan.
So this aval your rice is talking about the last 3 days?
I think so.
After three-
Maybe the two pshatim in the Gemara. I
after
think
3
I think that's one way to read it.
Oh,
So the question is, this person who was mafkir and is retracting, taking it back, is he taking off Meiser or not? The pashas would be that after we said that you cannot retract, so it's pater. With the rice, you should be able to retract. If we think in Rabbi Yossi's mind now, is this thing pater from Meiser? With the rice, it didn't leave your domain. Right? Every time you do Rabbi Yossi, every time you do hefker, it remains by you until somebody takes it. Nobody took it. So the fact that he made it hefker and took it back, is it pater from Meiser? Even if it was 3 days, is it pater from Meiser? But the rice it's not pater from Meiser. True? Because it never went away from him. It's not
it's still his.
Midrabanan, they said that after 3 days, you cannot retract, and it is hefker, and you pater from Meiser. That's an interesting thing. That's something you always have one on machmer. They're not going to make rules over here. Here it comes out that the Raisa is chayiv and Maisa, and Rabbanan is pater from Maisa. True. Again, with the Rabbi Yossi holds that hefker doesn't get out of your rishus until somebody takes it. You mafker it, and nobody took it, and you took it after 3 days. After a week, you took it back. And the Raisa, do you have to give Maisa?
No.
Yes, because it was never had.
Oh, never had.
Yes, you do.
And with the rice, you have to take off Maisa. And with Rabbanan, they say that it is hefker after 3 days.
Wouldn't have.
And you don't have to take off Maisa. How do Rabbanan do that? Always
They said
Rabbanan.
your rice was hefker?
But the rice, no, but the rice is not hefker. And Rabbanan is saying Rabbanan is hefker, and you don't have to take off Maisa.
That's what I mean. The Rabbanan, they would say it is.
Rabbanan is saying now that it's hefker and you don't have to take off Maisa. How do they do that? Always Rabbanan Machman on the rice. Here it comes out that the Rabbanan are going to be makel, but the rice you have to take off Maisa, but Rabbanan don't take off Maisa. Right?
So how will they do that?
How do they do that? So we would expect the Gemara to ask that question. We would expect the Gemara to ask, how can it be that with the rice you have to take off Maisa, but Rabbanan don't take off Maisa? The Gemara is a different question. The
But
Gemara,
I would think this is all going on Rabbi Yossi.
we are going in Rabbi Yossi according to Rish Lakish's explanation. According to Rish Lakish's explanation, that the Brisa is that the Brisa says, or anybody's going to say according to Rabbi Yossi. According to Rabbi Yossi, but the Brisa it will really be chayiv in Maisa because nefka is nothing until somebody takes it. If you talk Rabbi Yossi's language, we would say that you always have to take. And here it says that there's such a thing as after 3 days, it's pater from Maisa, and we're saying it's only midrabanan, and that doesn't make sense. How can it be? But the rice says chayiv in Maisa, and the one pater from Maisa. That doesn't work, right? You happy with the question?
No, I didn't get it.
The rice says that you have this produce over here, that it was mafka and he took it back after 3 days. With the Maisa, what would you say? You have to take off Maisa?
Say again.
He has produce that he was mafka and took it back after 3 days.
He has to mice.
Now the Rabbanan come along and say in the same time, in that case, you don't have to be. It's a hefker.
Because it was a really good
It was
hefker.
a real hefker. It really is not a good hefker. It's only Rabbanan that people should not forget about hefker. So they said that because people don't shtakach. So it comes out that the Rabbanan are coming to be maker. They're coming to be more lenient. That it becomes pater from Maisa.
Right?
The rice.
Do you rice of it?
Maybe once the bottom say it's you can't take it back, it becomes hefka. Hefka bezel hefka.
So the Russia has that possibility. The Russia has that possibility. So just to get the question with everybody, we would expect that we cannot be making one of the rice. They're coming to be more lenient. They want ever more lenient.
The
on the
mice
rice.
it's going to be. Then the mice they take would be the Rabbanan.
But then he's not taking rice. If they're
Rabbanan, the Rabbanan, you do have to take mice.
no, but the rice you have to take Maisa, and now when everybody don't have to take Maisa. That's the question. According to what we have so far, before we start the Gemara on the top line,
Yeah.
it comes out that with the rice you have to take off Maisa, and the Rabbanan say you don't have to take off Maisa. With the rice, it's not hefker, so you have to take off Maisa. With Rabbanan, it is hefker, and you don't have to take off Maisa. That comes out that Rabbanan telling him to go against the Torah.
Okay.
That
I thought the rabbis would say that the Rabbanan, we do say it's hefker.
This is the kasha. This is the kasha.
With Rabbanan, it is hefker, and therefore it's pater from Maisa,
With the Rabbanan, it's hefker.
and therefore it's pater from Maisa.
Oh,
That's the problem. That
yeah.
no, so we respect the Gemara to ask the question. The Gemara asks a very edel kasha. How do you say edel?
Light.
They're very
Light.
fine and light and not a punch.
And it's subtle,
Let's
it's
pick
subtle,
a-
subtle could be a word?
Gentle.
A
Gentle,
okay,
gentle.
okay.
A very gentle question. We would have thought that it'd be more aggressive and say, how could you say it's potter? But the rice that's chayiv. The Gemara asked a gentle question. So Dr. Fine said that it could be, this is, the Rush talks about it, but it doesn't seem so definite that you could say that if Rabbanan said that it's hefker, it really becomes hefker because hefker doesn't hefker. That as far as monetary laws, that if Bezin said that it's hefker, so it's hefker. And then you put it even on the Raisa level, even though the Raisa wouldn't be hefker, the Rabbanan made it
the
hefker.
rabbis made
Once
it.
they made it hefker, so then it's really hefker. But that chant is a little bit, has some complications, the continuation of the Gemara. So we can put it on hold. Dr. Fine said a Rush, which says that a possibility, but the Rush himself also points out the problems with that shot. We'll continue and see if anybody is happy or not happy. The Gemara asked a gentle question. That if you're going to make something potter, nedarim, it means the Gemara, ignoring our question that Rabbanan is saying that it's potter, for some reason the person is giving, that's the missing link over here, that for some reason the person is giving Maisa, even after Rabbanan tell him that it's Hefker, and you potter from Maisa, he's still taking off Maisa, Midrabbanan. That link, that needs explanation. Why is he doing that? It's Rabbanan say, if the Maisa is the Maisa, he has to take off Maisa. But Rabbanan doesn't have to take off Maisa. But the Gemara looks at him as if he's taking off Maisa Midrabbanan. He is taking off Maisa Midrabbanan. This person who was mafkirit, and for 3 days you left it, then he took it back, he is going to be Maaser Midrabbanan. He's going to look at it that this thing is going to put a sign over there, I have to tie this Midrabbanan. It doesn't, I was asking that he should put a sign on it that is potter from Maaser, because Rabbanan said it's Hefker. And Dr. Fine backed it up and said Hefker Bez Hefker is really potter. The Gemara doesn't go with that exactly. The Gemara is saying that he's putting a sign on it. He's going to put his note that I have to be Maaser Midrabbanan. And the Gemara's kasha is, if you're going to be Maaser, put it this way, he doesn't put a sign Midrabbanan, he puts on his hand, he has to be Maaser. Even after Rabbanan said that it's Hefker, he's still going to be Maaser. So the question the Gemara asks is, there's a halacha when you have something which is really potter, and you take off, and there are things that you have two produces, one which is chayiv and ma'aser, one which is potter. If you take off from one or the other, you messed it up. If you took off from potter produce on chayiv produce, so you didn't take off a good truma, so the chayiv produce is still chayiv. You didn't take a good tithing. You have to take from something which is chayiv, tevel on tevel. But if you take from potter on tevel, so you didn't fix up the tevel. If you take from tevel on potter, also you messed up because the tevel didn't become truma. Usually you say you have to be truma on that. So then this becomes truma, that becomes chulun. But if the thing was potter, so then your tevel didn't turn into truma. It's still plain tevel. So there's a mistake. If someone's going to be maaser, if he's going to tithe from chayiv on potter or potter on chayiv.
If it's putter, then it's chulin, isn't it?
If it's potter, it's chulin, yes. But
So now he's meistering chulin.
he's meistering chulin, yes. If he's meister chulin, chulin and potter on potter, so he didn't do anything. It's garnished. We tell him it's garnished. But if he was maaser,
That's not minachai.
right, so again, if there's chayiv on, the best thing is chayiv on chayiv, right? That's a regular case. You have tevel on tevel, you take off. This is truma on that.
Yeah.
And this before was tevel and tevel, now it's truma and chulin. Wonderful. If he does potter on potter, so it's chulin, and now it's still chulin and chulin.
Yeah.
He says truma and chulin. No, the truma is not truma; it's really chulin, but no big loss, no loss.
Okay.
He's living to the kohen, whatever, but no loss. But if he takes tevel on potter, what did he do? He says the tevel is now truma on the potter. The tevel didn't become truma, so it's really tevel still. And he gives it to the kohen and says, "Here, my dear kohen, here's the truma." He's really giving him tevel. And the other way, that if you take off,
And the chiyuv ala putter, that'd be like.
that's case for say tevel. He was tevel. He takes off tevel onto his chulin. He didn't do anything, and the tevel is still tevel. You can make tevel into truma. You can't make chulin into truma. So that would be the problem of chiyuv ala
So we
potter.
tell and look, but he's saying it's true.
It's true. He thinks it's truma, and the kohen's eating it with a big bracha shekadeshanu with the shasha shalaron, and he's eating tevel. That's the problem of chiyuv ala potter. The other problem, potter ala chiyuv. He has things that are chulin, and he has tevel. He says that the chulin should be truma on the tevel.
Yes.
and the chulin is still chulin, and tevel is still tevel. So that's a problem. And the Gemara's kasha is after this whole thing that he did hefker, and we tell him that it's potter, it's a good hefker and it's potter, he still is gonna make a mistake for some reason and consider it chayiv, and he's gonna take off on something which is really tevel, or vice versa. And that's the Gemara's kasha, that he's tithing it and he's messing it up because the Rabbanan said that it's potter. With the rice it's chayiv. With the rice it's tevel. With the Rabbanan it's not. For some reason he's still using it, tithing it, and he's making a mistake because it's not. It's with the rice. It's is that the rice and the Rabbanan now. For some reason the Gemara threw in a Rabbanan now. That's questionable. How did the Gemara get a Rabbanan? The choretz is potter l'gam. You shouldn't realize that it's potter. The Gemara answered. There's a kasha on the pshat on Rav Yossi. No, the pshat that we just finished saying. I think the pshat that we just finished saying that after 3 days, it's really with the Raisa not hefker. According to Rabbanan, after 3 days, it's really hefker. It's really hefker even before that, maybe. But after 3 days, it's really hefker. According to Rav Yossi, really it's not hefker. There's no hefker. According to Rav Yossi, until somebody takes it. Nobody took it, so really it's not hefker. And the reason we said it's hefker is because of the Shakhatar is hefker. And that the Gemara is saying you're getting messed up now because he's going to think one way, and there's going to be maser on something which he thinks is it's chayiv and chayiv, and really it's not. Really it's chayiv or potter and chayiv. And the Gemara answers that we tell him take off maser, even though we're saying that it's hefker and the chayiv potter from maser. We're telling him that you should be maser. That sentence needs an explanation, which we don't have right now. That even though we say that it's hefker, but do be maaser, and don't be maaser like anything else, be maaser from itself, means don't mix this with other produce and say this is going to be maaser on that, or that's going to be maaser on this. Take off from this. You have now 10 bushels, take off from these 10 bushels of this stuff that you are mafkir, take off from itself. Don't use it with something else. Not from it and itself, from within itself, from it and itself, from within itself. That you tell them take off ma'aser from it, which is the Gemara is very ambiguous. The Gemara is vague. The Gemara doesn't say why is he taking ma'aser. If we tell him that it's potter because it's hefker, so he shouldn't take off ma'aser. For some reason, he is taking off ma'aser, and we want to make sure that he knows that with the raisa, it's chayiv. Rabbanan is potter, and he shouldn't get mixed up with other ones. So we tell him, put this as a unit by itself and be maaser from it within itself. Not so clear, and a lot of missing points over there, but the Gemara got through it. At this point, what do we have? Kids are really not explaining this part. I don't know as well. There's some hurdles over here, but the Gemara got through 2 pshatim. Again, we started off with the Yesod that someone be mafkir and retract. According to Rav Yossi, you should be able to retract indefinitely. According to Rabbanan, you should not be able to retract right away, even from the beginning. And the Gemara said one possibility is that the Rabbanan agree that you can retract when it was a temporary hefker. Temporary hefker also works the same way, that it doesn't got to be rishus until somebody picks it up. That was the first teres of Hula, and the second teres was Rish Lakish, that Rav Yossi himself also agrees that even though according to him you should always be able to retract. After 3 days you may not. Meisvei. Amafkir is kamal with a shachar amad ubatzma. Somebody was mafkir his vineyard, and in the morning, which sounds like the next morning, he got up and he harvested it. That's within 3 days. That surely doesn't pater him from these matanos laniyim. These are things that go to the poor. Peret means the individual grapes that fall down during this thing, similar to leket. Odolos means deformed clusters of groups. Shikha and peya. Shikha is if he forgot something, he didn't harvest it. Peya is supposed to leave a certain percentage at the edge of the field. Anyway, these things don't become part of if you're mafkir. If at the time, even if you had a field which was hefker, and you took ownership of it, then you go to harvest. So all these things you're chayiv for. you're not putter from these matanos aniyim if at the time of the harvest they belong to you, which is not our subject right now, but it does say putter ben amaisa. Akitzu, it says here that if you mafka something and the next day you took ownership of it, which sounds like he's retracting his hefker, so it's putter. Does that make sense? Is he putter from Meiser if he was mafka it and he took it back? So the Gemara looks back.
It's a real,
If it was hefker, no, the question, so we go back to the general question, can you retract a hefker? We started off the sugya that of course, according to Rabbi Yossi, you can
not much.
You can retract. 'cause
You can
never
retract.
Never left.
you can retract because it never left you. And according to Rabbanan, you cannot retract because you gave it away already.
We own them.
Here it says that you cannot retract. If it says Potaman on Maisa, this seems to say that you cannot retract.
Because Rabbi Yossi is high.
Not Rabbi Yossi. Here it says again, I'm not sure what you said just now, Rabbi Yossi. Here it says if you were mafkir the next morning, within 3 days, the next morning, you took it back, you're Potaman on Maisa. Does that make sense? According to Rabbanan, it makes sense because you cannot retract a hefker. The Gemara said maybe a temporary hefker you could retract because it doesn't leave your domain. But on a permanent hefker, the Rabbanan say you cannot retract it even the next day. According to Rabbi Yossi, what do we hold according to Rabbi Yossi?
You would say
You're
you're
fine because you can. Then and they showed you the next day, not 3 days. If anything, we said after 3 days, Rabbi Yossi is also going to say you cannot retract. But within the 3 days, you could retract. So would it not be Potam and Amaisa? So this din should be dependent on Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. If it says over here that you cannot retract, here by saying Potam and Amaisa is another way of saying you cannot retract. That seems to be according to Rabbanan, not according to Rabbi Yossi. And the Bryce, it seems that this Bryce is a continuation of what from the fact that the Gemara is the Kasha. It seems, I'm not sure, that this Bryce is a continuation. I'm not sure if it's a Bryce or Mishnah, I don't know. But the Gemara thinks that it should be whatever we just spoke about till now. If we spoke about the Rabbanan till now, or Rabbi Yossi till now, if it was a continuation of the Bryce before. Bishlam Ula, the Rabbanan Katanila, or the Raisa Katanila. According to Ula was the first terrace in the Gemara, and he said that Rabbanan say that with the Raisa you cannot retract, and therefore it's potter. Now they also agree that the Gemara has to. They also agree that within the first 3 days, you can retract. So that's a problem. Maskin, that even though it says here that it's potter ben amaisa, and we say contra Rabbanan, it makes sense because you cannot retract. But we said that the first 3 days you can retract. The Gemara before didn't speak out according to what's the difference between the first 3 days, but you must say that it says that within the first 3 days you can retract. So he'll say, what?
It's not retracted.
What do you mean?
It's not retracted. The Zohar on it.
Over here, in this case?
The Zohar.
So it seems that the Gemara, and then the Gemara wouldn't make sense. It seems that the case is that he's retracting. I think the Gemara would not make sense if he's being Zohar from Hefker now. If he's being Zohar from Hefker. I think the Gemara understands that he's retracting. And therefore the Gemara says, according to Rabbanan, it makes sense that with the Raisa, he can not retract. And therefore it's Potam and Amaisa. But the truth is, Jabbar Katanila, the Raisa Katanila. It's only saying with Rabbanan is Potter, with the Raisa is Potter. They're going to say with Rabbanan it is Chayiv, because with Rabbanan you can retract within the first 3 days. Which before the Gemara didn't make a deal about the Ramoyan, but after the Gemara says it at the Rabbi Yossi, because according to Rabbanan also, that's the difficulty in the Gemara before. The Gemara didn't say it in Rabbanan, but anybody that says the difference between 3 days and after 3 days, the Rabbanan also agreeing to it. If Ula said the whole, let's go back a second. When Ula spoke, what did he say? Say with the ratio Rabbanan, say for Nami Rabbanan. He was happy with the ratio. He said the whole thing is Rabbanan. So, but the ratio itself says that within 3 days you cannot retract. Within 3 days you can retract. So even though he says that according to Rabbanan, it leaves your domain and it's a good hefker, and you really cannot retract. The first 3 days they said you could retract. Why? Because Ramon. So the what here is saying that this part, this halacha where it says by Hamafke Kambo, and then he but at least the Raisa makes sense, then on the Raisa level is part of Maisa. But do you want to say this Raisa, this halacha is going to fit even according to Rabbi Yossi?
So, excuse me, just a minute. So when Ula was saying, when it says the Rabban Katani Law, that means the first 3 days? And the Raisa means the last 3 days?
No. This word says Yel Shachar. It says Yel Shachar. It says he was mafkir his vineyard, and the next morning he got up and he harvested it. That means that
we know it was.
he knows the next day, within 3 days. And it says it's part of an Amaisa. And does that fit with anybody? So Ulu will say it goes according to Rabbanan, and it's only saying it's part of the Raisa. But Rabbanan is Chayiv. But the words at least make sense that it's part of an Amaisa on the Raisa level, because the Rabbanan say on the Raisa level, you cannot retract. As soon as you mafkir something, it's Hefka, you cannot retract, and it's part of an Amaisa. It is true that Rabbanan said,
The Rabbanan Katani, that
the Rabbanan are speaking. The Rabbanan is the author. Rabbanan means the Rabbanan of Rabbi Yossi are the author of this halacha, and they're only saying the halacha midaraisa. Maybe the words are confusing. The Rabbanan Katanila, the Raisa Katanila, that means the rabbis are speaking, and the rabbis of Rabbi Yossi, the ones who argue, the Chachamim who argue Rabbi Yossi are the author of this halacha, and they're telling you the halacha midaraisa. They're telling you that midaraisa is part. They also agree with Rabbanan is chayiv. The Rabbanan will say Rabbanan is chayiv, but midaraisa is part. Again, because according to Ula's way of looking at it, the Rabbanan hold that after you mafkir something, you cannot take it back. It loses your domain right away. It leaves your domain, so you cannot retract. Once it left your domain, you cannot retract. And that's why it's a good hefker, and it's part of an amaisa, because you can't retract the hefker. With Rabbanan, they said you could retract the hefker within 3 days, so it's going to be chayiv in maisa with Rabbanan. But that doesn't bother us. The fact that it says here, part of an amaisa means on the maisa level. And at the one level, the taka would be chayiv to take off maisa. But according to Rish Lakish was going in the Rabbi Yossi panel. Rabbi Yossi holds that you can always, with the rice, you always can retract a hefker because it never left your domain. They made a Rabbanan that after 3 days you cannot retract, but the Rabbanan is on after the 3 days. But within the 3 days, the fact that you can retract is with the rice that you can retract. If it's the rice you can retract, you're chayiv in Maisa. So even on the Raisa level. So how could it say Pataman Maisa? This halacha does not fit with Rabbi Yossi. So he answers, yeah, you're right. Here, this is not going according to Rabbi Yossi. Here, Pataman Maisa is only according to Rabbanan. The more thought that he's going to want to say that whatever talks about Rabbi Yossi is talking. I was going according to Rabbi Yossi, and I said that with the Raisa, it will be chayiv because he can retract. But this Raisa is going according to Rabbanan that he cannot retract, and with Rabbanan he can retract, and Pata means Pata Raisa with the Raisa. Comes out that everyone seems to agree more or less that the issue will be Machlokas of Yossi and Rabbanan. Back to the question, we still go another couple of lines just to finish, and the rest of it seems to be much easier. And
according to Rabbi Yossi, the only time Hefka is part of a Maisa is after somebody else takes it, right?
it says no. It says that if you explain that after 3 days he agrees that
No, I'm talking before the Gezerah. According to Rabbi Yosef,
then you could take it back. There's no such thing as a hefker really. Whenever you take it back, so nothing happened. So being mafka something, and
but he holds that Hefka is part of a Maisa, doesn't he?
Yes, it will be.
So that would be only after somebody else takes it.
What's the case of hefker Maisa?
If he makes his Hefka and somebody else takes it, then the person who takes it is part of a Maisa.
And what's the question that he didn't take it from hefker, he took it from somebody?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I mean, I'm saying Rabbi Yosef seems to hold that in between thing, as long as, until somebody takes it, it belongs to him. Once
Mhm.
somebody takes it,
Uh-huh.
it means you took it from Hefka.
I don't know the answer unless you talk about a hefker that was ownerless from its inception. Hefker tree, things like that. And then hefker is potter. But if it belongs to somebody and it doesn't leave his domain until I take it, so then there should never be a derisa. Those cases wouldn't be a case of taking from hefker. So far, what did we come out? That the question about being potter from Meiser is dependent on if the hefker could be retracted or not. And if hefker could be retracted, it should be totally in Rav Yossi and the Rabbanan. According to Rav Yossi, you can retract because it never left your domain. Yet the contract one you cannot retract because it's left your domain. And the Gemara spoke about how to fix up the prices according to each one. Maybe a temporary, the hefker is going to be different. Maybe Rabbi Yossi is going to agree that after 3 days with Rabbanan you cannot retract. But the Yesod still remains that the Machlokes is Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan if you could retract or not. Ibo Isema. Or if you want, I could say another factor over here that's going to affect the whole thing. How the after a bumpe train, how the after a bumpe klasa. There's a difference if you were marking in front of 2 people or 3 people, which everybody jumped up when we learned the Mishnah. Everybody had a very good question that everybody knows you have to have hefker in front of 3 people. And therefore, the Mishnah is talking about the Reuben and Shimon are going on the road and nobody else is there. And he's going to put it down the rock and say, this is hefker. How is that a hefker? No, but only there, the 2 people are on the road by themselves. So it's only being marked in front of 1 person. So that question is now going to be addressed. And here the Gemara comes up with the issue: how many people do you have to be mafker in front of? How that the one case talking about after a bape train, but after a
Meaning 2 others.
in front of two, and you're mafker in front of
the
2.
3rd person.
The one who's being mafker is mafker in front of 2 people,
Uh-huh.
or he's being mafker in front of 3 people. What's the difference if it's 2 or 3? Then Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum, Rabbi Shimon, Yod Tzadok, call a mafker b'fnei shlosha v'hefker b'fnei shnayim lo v'hefker. If you're mafker in front of 3 people, it's good. Less than 3 is not good. So to fit it into the Gemara over here. Some say that it doesn't mean it's not hefker at all. It means the issue that we spoke about, the Yochanan, who spoke about that according to Rav Yossi, it doesn't leave your domain until somebody takes it. He only meant when you were mafker in front of 2. When you're mafker in front of 2, you have to wait until somebody takes it in order to that it is a hefker, but it's only hefker when somebody takes it. In front of 3, Rav Yossi also agrees that you could be mafker it and it leaves your domain right away. So this case, when he was mafker it, this case of the mafker mashkim or mafker iskamo was mafker in front of 3 people. So even though Rabbi Yossi doesn't argue with 3 people, he also agrees that it gets out of your wishes right away and you can't take it back, and therefore it's part of an amaisa. Because there's another way to learn the Gemara to say that less than 3 is not hefker at all. New terrorists, forget about Rabbi Yochanan before. The Rosh goes this possibility also that when the Mishnah Rabbi Yochanan before said the difference about leaving your rishus, not leaving your rishus, that was trying to be a new shot. You could say that he holds that the cases they're on the road by themselves. That's the reason why it's not a good hefker. But everybody asked, but everybody jumped up and said you're mafking less than 3 people, so it's not a good hefker. That might be the pshat in Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah. That's the reason why he holds that it's not good. The only problem is that the Tanna Kama argues and says that it is hefker even less than 3 people. The Gemara continues. Yes.
Originally, it said acher, and we were saying like Levi showed up.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, but then
That's
yeah.
less than 3.
No, it says no again.
We
It
had there
it
was
says
a
if Levi's
guy-
there, give it to Levi.
Huh?
If Levi's there, give it to Levi.
Oh, give it to Levi. We didn't mafker.
And then if Levi's not there, so it's only the 2 of them on the road. So you should put it down and be mafkir. So that's not being mafkir in front of
Not
3.
even 2.
One.
Not even
1. It's 1. So
Okay.
that's what it said. 2 is like 1.
Yeah.
2 is like 1.
Yeah.
So the Gemara is going to, at this point, the Gemara seems to say either it's not, according to Yossi, either it's not hefker, and according to Rabbanan it is hefker,
Uh-huh.
or at least according to Yossi, it's not hefker that until somebody takes it. So therefore, there wouldn't be an answer for the net there, it wouldn't be an answer to take it. And the one ends off, Bishul Levi Yamad, Vatorah Afilu Bechad Avi Hefker, or Matam Ramu Bishlosha, Kadei Shehei Yachad Zochel Shnai Midah. That means the rice hefker is even good in front of 1.
The Echad Havi Hefker.
Afilu Bechad Avi Hefker. Even if you, and the Mefarshim say not only Afilu Bechad, even if nobody's there. Even if a person
Because
is
the Hefker is good. If
it's
you,
a good
somebody who
Hefker.
makes it Hefker, his words work.
Right. Here it says even in front of one person, but
Yeah.
they say it means even if you're there by yourself also. And how come they say you should do 3? And nobody should have 1 person able to take it, and 2 people that should be able to testify that it was hefker and he got it. So after everything, how do you learn the Mishnah? The Mishnah says that if there are 2 people that are on the road and Reuben cannot benefit from Shimon, how could Shimon get it to him? So I want to say it could be mafkir.
Uh-huh.
And it's not called that is mine until somebody else takes it. No, if you mafkir it, even though there's only one person in front of you, it works. So the poskim say l'chora. We do pass like Rishub and Levi. At the end of the sugi, we pass like Rishub and Levi. That the rice, even one is good, even by yourself is good, even surely one. And only it's better that it should be three, but it does work. And the Chorah has the pshat that in our mission that nobody that under the circumstances he's hungry, he doesn't have what to eat, and only shivu and shimon out there, so they permitted to do the hefker even though it's only in front of one person, and it's out of his domain, and the other person is allowed to eat it. So this is the way it's, as far as hilchos hefker goes. That's what it says in halacha that you should do it in front of three, but if you don't have, it does work even in front of one. But the rice says hefker even in front of one, even in front of none. Even if they're by yourself, nobody's
You
there at
have
all.
what if you just leave it there? Is that also good?
You do a mice, he does an action that shows.
Yeah, on Rahov Chabad, there's a bench, a lot of people with books. On it. Is that good enough, or you have to say, I'm making this effort? I mean, in the end, whoever put it there never takes it back.
Mm.
Somebody takes it.
Yeah, well, once
Throw it
it's
away.
down, it's.
So is that a good habit? Do you have to say it?
And if you don't say so, then it still belongs to you, and the person who took it is using it with your permission.
Maybe you could say that it depends. If you,
Forever.
Forever.
if you put it in a place that's known as hefker, putting it there is like saying it's hefker.
Like it's official yam, or in a place where anybody could take it. So then.
No, if he leaves on a somewhere, it leaves it outside.
It's just a wrapping. It's not.
No, because then people might not take it. They might be careful and say no. Maybe didn't mean to long.
Well, that bench, you know which bench.
No, that
There's no
bench.
sign on that bench.
Because it's already done for a few years like that. So now it's like there's a sign. It's everything in the back.
Or put it in a place where anybody can take it. You see it if they know or not. Whatever the point is, there's a place where someone might take it, then it's not anymore guarded anymore. So that seems to be-
that's not my shop there. As machlokes Rishonim, I think when that's have go, it's just Chiva Shabbos Aleinu, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Okay, I hope that it was enjoyable.
Yeah, Shakar.
Here, just to point out, Hilchos Hefker, there's a thing called Hilchos Hefker in Choshen Mishpat. So it has here Halacha Reshayin Gimel, Halacha Zayin, Din Torah. Afilu Hefker b'fnei Echad Beis Hefker, and it's part of a Meiser, whatever the applications are. But they so for him and Hefker Ad Shefker b'fnei Shlosha. That's how the Shuvah labels. And some say the Ramah brings down. Some say even if he's by himself, not even one. But the Ramah says good Hefker even if he's by himself.
It's in the shoes or outside of the shoes.
I guess it doesn't make a difference.
Why not?
The case of the other size which is what we're talking about now, that you put in the place where anybody can take it, so maybe that's the different
No,
reason why it's
but
not.
if it's in a Hatzir, then the Hatzir Kona is, doesn't it?
But he's disowning it. He's saying, I don't want to be phone. I don't want to own it. I want to
You
disown
can
it.
do that if it's in.
I don't know. What this happens by beer masters.
Yeah, but you have to take it out of, we take it out of.
You do have to show it to some people.
And we're here to have 3 people there.
Because we do the thing that with the money should have 3 people. With the rice, it's a good enough even if you buy yourself.
If they say that if you buy yourself, you should take it out of your shoes.
Because of this issue that taking out of your shoes, you made it
Maybe
after.
if there's one wrong.
Oh, I was saying, I don't want to own it.
Yeah, but
I
you don't
want
want to, and then
They
so
say
then it's.
that-
different,
they say
and
that
then
nobody's-
it
They say that.
it seems like a perpetual getting it back.
Right, the joke.
It's
If-
had.
if I- if I-